It's the last day of February. That means tomorrow is March, and the Major League Baseball season starts in March. Oh, good.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on the Instagrams. I'm your pal Sully. I'm on Instagram at Sully Baseball Podcast. I'm on something called Blue Sky at Sully Baseball once every 43 days, but the best way to get a hold of me is right here on YouTube and post a comment. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 of bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to fanduel.com to get started. And yeah, I'm recording this on the 28th day of February 2025. On Saturday, it will be March, and baseball starts in March. I have my other obsession is on Sunday. I am an Academy Awards addict. I always see all the Best Picture nominees and everything, and I'm going to be onto that. And then once that's ends, we're going to be I'm going to be really, really working hard on getting the in memoriam video finished before the season begins. Um, Hey, let's go through the trivia question. I talked about I had talked about how um, we were the 4,000th hit for Pete Rose was when he was with the Expos. The 4,000th hit with Ty Cobb was when he was with the Philadelphia A's. Ichiro Suzuki did not get 4,000 hits in the major leagues, but he did get 4,000 hits if you combined the Japanese totals and his 3,000 some odd hits he got in in Major League Baseball. The question I asked was, what uniform was he wearing when he got his 4,000th career hit, professional hit? And Blake and Nago. I'm sorry, I'm butchering names sometimes. 5874. Ichiro got his 4,000th hit when he was with the Yankees in 2023 against the Toronto Blue Jays. That is 100% correct. He got it with the Yankees. And uh by the way, I'm going to read the whole comment because I cut it back a little bit. He says, "I normally don't know the trivia questions, but as a Japanese American youth baseball player of the 2000, Ichiro was something I knew well." And then proceed to go on and give the answer. The reason why I cut it short was I only have so many characters I could put on those little banners. Um, Let me just, I got a couple of uh, comments I'm going to bring up. But I'm going to, Useless Trucker is an everyday Sully listener, and he wrote to me, uh, does ABS ruin baseball? Um, and for those of you who wonder what ABS is, that is the new automated ball strike system, and that is a a system where there's an automated strike zone. Now, the batter has the ability to challenge a a strike call or a ball call on a certain situation. Chances are, if it was called ball, he's not going to challenge it to be a strike. But there's a limited number of challenges that the under the ABS system, teams can challenge a home plate umpire twice per game to review any ball or strike. And if you're wrong, you lose it. And if you're right, you can maintain, you can still challenge. And this is a way of sort of, I mean, I've been talking about this for a little bit, but it is something that has been experimented on in the minor leagues. When I went to the Sacramento River Cats game over the last summer, for those of you who followed me on Locked On A's, I wound up going to River Cats game for the purpose of going to a game in Sacramento to sort of get a sense of the field and everything, knowing the A's were going to be playing there. And I noticed every once in a while you would hear like it was the Sacramento River Cats versus the Albuquerque Isotopes, which is the Colorado Rockies affiliate. And you would hear, such and such from the Isotopes is challenging that. And it was quick. It was a pretty quick situation. Useless trucker, I do not think that this is going to ruin baseball. I do not think a challenge system for balls and strikes is going to be a thing that destroys the game. In fact, I think once they iron out the kinks of it and iron out the inevitable flaws or hiccups that are going to come about, I think it's going to make everything a little better. I think it'll be exciting to know when you're going to throw that challenge out there, especially at a big moment. It's going to keep umpires on their toes a little bit because they don't want to be losing these challenges. And it'll be something that you don't want to waste your challenge too early, but you also, if it's something egregious, um, it'll work. Look, there have been a lot of rule changes with baseball, and I'm going to address some of this coming up, but this potential ABS system, I think can work. And I think can add to the game. And I also think it can address something that is something that's been eating at my craw for years and years. In fact, if you go to the Sully Baseball YouTube page, I made a video about this in 2011. Okay, this is well before I was a podcaster. I would make these baseball videos, and I talked about why are there varied strike zones? Why do umpires? Why are there? Why can an umpire call this a strike and this a ball, and this other umpire call this a strike, this a ball? Why do we scout our umpires? Why do we have things like, well, he calls the high strike or he calls the low, he doesn't call the low inside pitch, or you get a little bit off the plate? There's a strike zone. And if it goes into the strike zone, it's a strike. If it goes out of the strike zone, it's not. And we can see that little, the little box that they first started doing in TBS. We now see it in real time. Does it hit that little box? If so, it's a strike. The idea of a varied strike zone makes zero sense to me. As do things like this catcher's really good at framing it, like it's outside the strike zone, but he pulls it back, which means he can trick the umpire. And I get it. You try to get every little advantage you can, but why is that part of the game? Especially because we have technology that can show us what the freaking strike zone is. And I don't understand how like the umpires don't call this, that, or the other thing. And I also don't understand the mentality that like, hey, if you're a rookie batter and you're facing a dominant veteran pitcher, you know what? If there's a doubt, the veteran's going to get the call. I don't understand that. If it is a strike, if it's Max Scherzer pitching it or some schmuck they just called up from Worcester, Massachusetts, if it's a strike, it's a strike. If it's a ball, it's a ball. And the human element of baseball should never be the umpire. It should never be an umpire's call. When you see something ridiculous from an umpire, whether it's the Don Denkinger call, whether it's Levon Hernandez at the Eric Gregg game in 1997, if you don't know what happened then, in 1997, the Florida Marlins, they're called the Florida Marlins back then, took control of the NLCS over a superior Atlanta Braves team based on Levon Hernandez striking out 14 or 15 batters. I can't remember how much it was. And the strike zone of Eric Gregg. Normally, the strike zone is from the letters to what around the knees, however it's designed up there. His strike zone was like as long as it was towards home plate, he was getting the call. The final strikeout against Fred McGriff, I think, was almost a wild pitch. I mean, it was so far out. It was so wide. And Levon Hernandez's reputation of being a big game pitcher is based solely on the fact that Eric Craig's, uh, strike zone was bigger than creation. I met Eric Craig once, and we actually worked together on a television project. And it could not have, the late Eric Gray could not have been a nicer man. But holy Toledo, why should we know his bad strike zone? Blown calls based on a strike zone shouldn't be part of the game. This it's hard enough to throw it. If you throw a brilliant pitch and it's not called a strike, and we all see that it's a strike, why shouldn't it be called a strike? If you throw a pitch that's clearly high or clearly outside, why should that be called a ball? And this doesn't mean I want to take jobs away from umpires. Most calls are just regular calls. Okay, most calls are done by the umpire, and most calls are not challenged. Most strikes calls aren't going to be challenged. Most ball calls are going to be challenged. And you don't have unlimited challenges. And when it happened in the game I was at Sacramento, I barely noticed it. One of the pitches was overturned, and it was quick. It's instantaneous. Boom. And that, if there's anything overturned, it should be something that obvious. It should be something egregious. No, it missed that call. Boom. If you have to analyze it for more than 30 seconds, screw it, move on. It's close enough. There have been changes in the rules in baseball over the last decade or so. And I want the rules, in terms of rules that happen with the officials, the umpires, I want more correct calls than incorrect calls. That's all I want. That's all I've ever wanted. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how some of the rules, the rule changes in baseball, I think have been, there have been a few that have not been great, but most of them have worked out all right. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, can combine your live bets with the same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it helps keep every moment of the game excited. Whether I'm backing the Celtics again in a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. There have been a bunch of rule changes here. And I want to bring up, when I made that video about strike zones back in 2011, I also made a video about instant replay because at the time there was no instant replay. Now there's instant replay. And it took a little bit to get the kinks out. Remember they had to leave the field, they had to go under a booth and everything like that. But what I've been saying is there should be, call for the instant replay, goes to New York. People in New York are already watching. They should be watching things. Oh, that's a close play there. Let's get it rewound back. I think instant replay should be no more than 30 seconds. If you're looking at video and it takes more than 30 seconds to tell whether or not someone's safe or out, move on. Move on. I don't want it to be the Zabruder film. I don't want to be like, oh, wait a minute, did his big toe lift up for a nanosecond? It's to basically avoid any Armando Galarraga, Don Denkinger situations in the future. 30 seconds. After that, move on. Same thing with balls and strikes. If it's a ball or strike call and you can't tell in 30 seconds, move on. There, they got it close enough. Time to move on. Time to move on. A lot of the rule changes, I think, have made the game better. I do think that. I do think the pitch clock has helped. Now, I'm saddened that it had to come to that. And, researching my 1972 book that I'm working on, it's amazing how fast-paced the game was because people stayed in the damn box and didn't step out of the box during an at-bat. It's sad that it had to come to a pitch clock, but, I think the pitch clock has worked. I really do. I think, the pace of play has picked up. Now, as I said before, pace of play and length of game are not synonymous, but the pace of play has picked up. And I also like the two throw over their rule. because it means more stolen bases, and I'm a huge fan of stolen bases. I hated the fact that stolen bases were taken out of the equation because they're risky in the sabermetrics world, and of course the elephant in the room for why you didn't steal bases was everyone's just roided up the yin yang, so it doesn't matter if you're on first, second, or third as long as you're on base when the guy hits a home run. If Ricky Henderson played in the if Ricky Henderson's prime was between 2002 and 2012, he probably would have topped out at 40 stolen bases a year because they would have put a rope on him. They would have tethered him. I absolutely believe that. I love stolen bases and I love that they're reckless. Go. Go. It's called fun. I know that's not a big thing, but it's called fun. Someone says, "He's coming," If they get thrown out, they get thrown out, but, that's part of it. But I think that rule has worked. I think the runner on second base and extra innings is a catastrophe. I think they've tried it. They've had it for a couple of years. It stinks. It's not baseball. It's not. And this is an old man Sully. I like the DH. Well, the other thing is I think the universal DH stinks. I like that the leagues were different. I like that there was a different type of play in the National League and in the American League. I like the DH, but I love pitchers hitting. I like that strategy. Do you lift the pitcher? Do you don't lift the pitcher? Do you double switch? I liked all that. It made it interesting. But I also like the DH. So guess what? We had two leagues with two different things. But I've been able to rationalize the universal DH because agreeing to that ended a potential strike or a prolonged lockout or a potential strike in 2022. So I've grinded my teeth. Okay, fine, universal DH. It sucks, but what are you going to do? But a lot of the rule change a lot of rule changes have worked. And I'm not one to praise Rob Manfred often. He's not high on my praising list, but I give Manfred and his leadership a little bit of credit for trying stuff out. I would love it if they phased out the runner on second in extra innings. My solution has always been uh, tie after 12. After 12 innings, it's a tie. My compromise would be this: if we have to have the runner on second, have it be the starting of the 12th inning. At least give us the 10th and the 11th inning to have extra inning baseball and have it be real baseball. If you have to have this BS runner on second base nonsense, can it be after a couple innings of extra? Can we have at least a little bit of extra inning excitement? That's the one thing I look forward to in the postseason is you actually have to play a real extra inning game. My heart sinks when I see a game go into extras. It's like, oh God, they got that BS runner on second nonsense. But a lot of the rule changes have worked because they've affected things like I want more base stealing. I want there to be more action. The pitch clock and the throw to second, both of those worked. Um, one rule change that I think has backfired them is the you have to face three batters because that has led to some finagling that has slowed down the game a little bit. My solution is this: that, and I've said this before, you get four pitchers over 9 innings. You get four. I don't want a parade of pitchers. I don't want to hear this pitcher pitched five, and then you have the sixth, the seventh, the eighth, and the ninth. No, no, you get four pitchers. You get four pitchers, and if your starting pitcher goes nine, great, great. But if your starting pitcher goes two, you got to have a long man in there. You got to have someone who can give you some length. I miss pitchers giving us length. I hate box scores in the regular season or the postseason that look like a spring training game where everyone pitches one inning. There's no rhythm. There's no uh, uh, personality of a pitcher in that. The thumbprint of a pitcher in that. But ABS, automatic. What is that? What it is? And that's. I'm sorry. I'm getting. Yeah, it's the ABS system, the automatic ball strike system. It's coming. It's gonna be part of Major League Baseball, whether you like it or not, and you will get used to it. And in the end, it will make umpiring a little better. I'm all for just using that strike zone, just that virtual strike zone. If it goes in there, we see automatically. You hear it strike, ball. Yeah, there's no arguing in there. I'm for getting out of arguing, and it just keeps it moving. And it doesn't matter who you are. If you throw it in that strike zone, boom. If you throw it out of that strike zone, it's a ball. If you throw it in the strike zone, it's a strike. But the ABS system is going to come in. It will be part of Major League Baseball. I don't know when, and we'll get used to it. And anything that gives us more correct calls and a faster pace of the game, I'm for. It is happy birthday time to Randy Arozarena, who is now 30 years old. Randy Arozarena gave us all quite a thrill in the 2020 postseason when he was absolutely electric in the for Tampa Bay, where when he batted 500 in the wild card series against the um, Blue Jays, and then against the Yankees, hit three huge home runs, had an OPS over 1.371, and then the ALCS kept it going, hit four home runs, and was the ALCS MVP and kept it going in the World Series. He had three more home runs, batted 364. His OPS was 1.234 as the Rays took the Dodgers to 6 games. Continued his big postseason numbers against Boston in the weird division series loss to a far inferior Red Sox team. That Rays team should have won the pennant that year. Um, became an all-star, and it was weird. He was the rookie of the year in 2021, even though he played in the postseason in 2019 and in 2020. I didn't get enough plate appearances to qualify, so he became the rookie of the year. His production after his all-star season in 2023 took a big dip, and last year he was sent packing to the Seattle Mariners as they tried to make a run at a playoff spot. It didn't work out. Roseran's star kind of dimmed in Seattle, but he's back and he's mentoring a fellow Cuban in Lazaro Montes, according to a Seattle Times article. And look, I make no bones about it. I want to see Seattle do well. They're the last team to never appear in a World Series. And Randy Arozarena, especially when he was just exploding and being something fun and positive to root for during the COVID postseason, I found him very easy to root for. Even when he was playing the Red Sox, I found him very easy to root for. And I would love to see, that great talent that he was displaying. I mean, he's 30 years old. But in those few years, he, in 2021, 2022, and 2023, had good pop, stole a bunch of bases, and and was really exciting to watch. I would love to see him once again show a little bit of that excitement with the Seattle Mariners. Which is going to bring us to today's trivia question. He played for Rosarena played for the Rays, and now with not the Marlins, the Mariners. The Marlins for a second. Marlins Hall of Famers. What player currently in the Hall of Fame played the most games for the Marlins? What current Hall of Famer played the most games wearing a Marlins uniform? I'm not saying he played for the Marlins their whole career. That's not what I'm saying. What player has had the most appearances as a Marlin in the Hall of Fame? That is your trivia question for us. I'll tell you one thing: it's not Mike Piazza, although he is in the Hall of Fame as a Marlin. There is at least one person who played more games as a Marlin who has himself a plaque in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter. Well, actually, no, I'm not on Twitter anymore. I'm on Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best, if you want to get a hold of me, just go to the YouTubes and post it right here in the comments section. Talking about balls and strikes and new rules and saying, do you know what? Some of them are pretty good. This has been Locked On MLB, Have fun watching the Oscars. Those of you who watch the Oscars with me, I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.